Uniquely Human, the podcast, is produced by Elevated Studio. Music is graciously provided by Matt Savage of Savage Records.
Welcome to the Uniquely Human podcast. My name is Dr. Barry Prezant, and along with my co-host and partner, Dave Finch, we're excited for the episode that we have this week.
Yes, indeed. Today we are diving deep into the arts with two visionaries, and we're so fortunate to be able to share this time with them.
You know, the themes of this episode are very dear to both your heart and my heart because we're both into the performing arts. We're both into music. We're both musicians. And so we're really going to explore those themes by people who've kind of taken those areas to the next step with their families.
We'll chat with the pride of Providence, Mike Craigler. Mike is a composer, arranger, teacher. He's an accompanist. There's really nothing in music he hasn't done except for maybe tanning antelope hides to make his own djembes. Anyway, we'll talk about his deeply moving choral composition, about loving an autistic person and accessing their world, which was inspired by his son. But first, Elaine Hall was a top Hollywood children's acting coach whose life changed dramatically after her toddler son, Neil, whom she adopted from a Russian orphanage, was diagnosed with autism. This was back in the 90s, and she could see clearly that the so-called therapeutic approaches of the day were doing very little to truly help him, so she chose to join his world instead of trying to get him to join hers. And, this led to her developing her own methodology for unlocking the potential of autistic children and adults, and subsequently led to the creation of something called the Miracle Project. And this is amazing. The Miracle Project provides fully inclusive theater, film, social skills, and expressive arts programs for people with autism and all abilities. And it's through these shared creative experiences with peers that the Miracle Project is able to help people develop social and job skills, things like enhancing communication skills, increasing self-awareness, boosting confidence, easing anxiety, and even finding just joy in experiences. And because it's Elaine, the story does not stop there. There's always something exciting within reach. So, Elaine, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, so happy to be here. Giddy. So happy to be here.
Us too. Elaine, I don't think I've seen you, well, obviously since before the pandemic, but it was probably 2019 or something.
Yeah, last time I saw you was at the Atypical party. That's
right. That's the last time I saw you and Dom both.
That's right.
Wow, so you guys go to parties that are atypical?
Well, first we have to define what a typical party is, which is usually nightmarish. So atypical parties are actually quite enjoyable.
Quite fun. Good hors d'oeuvres, too, if I can remember right.
They were incredible. I got there a little bit late, but I do recall they also had open bar, which is...
They did.
Classy. This is a top shelf organization.
Top shelf. Netflix. Yeah.
That's a high bar to reach.
Right.
Well, Elaine, Dave and I certainly know all the details of your storied story and past. As we all know, your story was beautifully depicted in Autism the Musical. But for those listeners who may not be familiar with your story, would you like to begin with a little encapsulation of what the Miracle Project is and what inspired you to develop the Miracle Project?
Sure. So the Miracle Project is a theater and film program for individuals on and off the spectrum. It's a fully inclusive musical theater, storytelling, social skills, life skills program for all ages, from 5 years old all the way up. And we use the creative and performing arts to bring out the often unheard voices of those on the spectrum. But more than that is we develop content and a space where everyone's voices are heard. And we celebrate those on and off the spectrum as well as people of all abilities. Where it came from is I was working as a TV and film acting coach and consultant to studios. And when I was working on a movie, The Flintstones, I wanted my own Bam Bam. I wanted a child of my own. And I wasn't able to give birth biologically. So I chose to adopt. And I adopted a little boy from Russia who looked just like Bam Bam. and like Bam Bam, he had very few words. He spun around in circles. He stared at his hand for hours at a time. And this was now 24 years ago. So we didn't have this podcast then. We didn't have Uniquely Human. We didn't have Atypical. So what I did is what I know best. I used my background in music and movement and creative dramatics, and I joined my son's world. And if he'd spin in circles, I'd spin with him. And if he would flap his hands, I'd flap with him. And traditional therapists thought that I was crazy. But fortunately, Barry, this is how our story began. And I love telling this. I emailed you, never thinking I'd get an email back. And he did. He emailed me back and led me to some books to read and things to go by. And I started training my actor, director, music friends about what I was learning about autism and using creativity to reach him. So that's how it all started.
And at that time, I might add how amazing it was when you said, and we used creativity, because of course, back then the notion was that children and autistic people were anything but creative. And I think one of the great changes that has come about through the Miracle Project is bashing that myth.
I think that bashing the myth, I love that. I think what was great is because I was not in the field of special education. So I had no idea what individuals on the spectrum, and I had no training prior in autism. I got it all on the ground training, but I didn't know that kids with autism couldn't take adult-directed activity, couldn't follow directions, couldn't wear costume. I didn't know what they were supposed to not be able to do. And because we were just doing it. You know, we were writing shows and putting on musicals and wearing costumes. I remember one time there was a character that needed to wear a beard, and the mom said, "Oh, he can't wear a beard because his sensory sensitivity." And we both looked over, and he had this beard on, you know, because the idea of playing this character took precedent over, or more importance over, the sensory sensitivities. And so, yeah, we debunk a lot of myths.
I think it sounds like not knowing the popular opinion. I think that probably served you and your son best in the mid-90s. You would have heard so much, "He can't, you shouldn't." And it turns into, of course you flap and stim with your child. Of course you spin. Of course you tumble. And you know my wife, Kristen, so she...
I love Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
She...
Everybody loves Kristen.
She is. I'm the price of admission. Like, they read my book and they say, "All right, you get out of the way. I need to talk to this Kristen." But and for good reason. But even, you know, that was her strategy when she worked with children with autism as a speech language pathologist, is she would say, many volumes of books are written about what you're not supposed to be able to do or how you're not supposed to be able to feel, but I'm not interested in any of that. Let's meet you where you are and let's build a context around you. And the results are so much better when you do that.
Yeah, Dave, that's exactly it. I mean, I was told all those things about my own son. I mean, he's severely autistic, non-speaking, banged his head for hours at a time. So I was told that by the specialists here. I was told that he'll never, he'll not be able to communicate. He'll not be able to be social. I was told all those negative things. And I was also told with the Miracle Project that it's impossible to do what we do. And I kind of boldly said, well, I'm so glad I didn't know it was impossible because we're doing it. And, so I think, Kirsten and I are I adore her and such kindred spirits because she was doing it before it was popular. And I was doing it because I just something to the parents. And I know on your podcast, which is so phenomenal. And you have parents on that speak as well. But for your parents that are listening I always say, trust your gut. You know your child better than anyone else. And so that, for my son, the traditional therapies gave him tremendous anxiety. But when I joined his world and we played and we flapped and we were birds running around the room together, flying around the room together, we had joy and we had connection. And what does any parent want but to connect to their child?
And Elaine, from the very beginning, you were asking what we now refer to as the actors in the Miracle Project and families to take risks. Again, it's so hard to describe, but the safe, secure, trusting space that you create allows all the magic to happen.
Thank you, Barry. That's really the cornerstone of everything we do. And then and by the way, we write musicals. The most important is to set an intention to make relationship paramount. And I actually developed a textbook called 7 Keys to Unlock Autism. And really, it's not about unlocking autism. It's about teaching the neurotypicals how to show up. And that's the backbone of the Miracle Project. Setting an intention to be curious. It's what you talk about in Uniquely Human, to ask the why questions, to be curious, to know that everything is purposeful, and to set our own intention to be respectful and kind and loving. And then to understand that everyone has, the second key is about understanding our own challenges, and that everyone has challenges, and one of your quotes that I use when I speak, when I present is, that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. It's just sometimes in autism, the weaknesses can get in the way of being able to do what things that they want to do in their daily life. So it really starts with ourselves. And what do we want? We have co-actors, those without disabilities or seeming, obvious, whatever, disabilities, right? And they say coming to the Miracle Project, they feel they can be themselves more than they can be themselves with their best friends because there's no judgment.
The same parallels exist for acting and for just being a healthy person, a person with some self-esteem and a sense of purpose. And that is be present, be grounded, be connected, and know your boundaries, and self-advocate. And if you can do all 5 of those things in a scene with another actor, it's going to be a tremendous scene. And if you can do that when you're just waiting online to buy some groceries, then I think you're going to have a good time buying your groceries.
Yeah, David, I've never heard it put so beautifully about the correlation between acting and the Miracle Project, but I think that's so right on. Everything that we learn at the Miracle Project, we call it rehearsing for life. And as a character, as an actor, you have to do those things. As a performer, you have to have when I coach on sets, with TV stars, not only our kids, but, we talk about how you have to be a finely tuned instrument as a performer. And so you do need that higher state of self-awareness so that one, you can bring your full self, but then the other, you can embody qualities of your character. So you've got to be so finely tuned. You can be the greatest piano player in the world, but if your piano is not tuned, it's going to sound horrible. And same as an actor. And there is an ability to tap that higher consciousness, especially with those of us who are neurodiverse, because the world is different. And we can tap those abilities. And so what we do with them, I know we're going to get so philosophical, but then I'm talking to Dave Finch and Barry Prezant. So you've opened that channel. But that, we're helping these young people to be the best they can be. And we keep defying myths. I mean, we have non-speakers who say their first words. My son types to communicate. He used to spin around in circles and bang his head, and now he's presented with me twice at the United Nations. We have a young woman who used to, when she came to us at 8 years old, used to scream all the time, and now she sings opera. A young actor stuttered, and he is a professional actor. Dom, who you'll meet soon. I mean, so there's so many things, but the most important thing is they know who they are. They self-advocate. They share their love of each other. It's a love fest. People come in a room, they go, these kids aren't on the spectrum. These young adults aren't on the spectrum, because they're sharing how much they appreciate and love each other, which is the truth about when you feel accepted and appreciated and that you belong.
So, Elaine, you were reading my mind, because I was going to invite you to talk about, some of the incredible achievements, not only that you've seen in Miracle Project actors, but how you've been welcomed around the world. I mean, I maybe some people who are listening now and are not familiar with the Miracle Project might say, well, isn't that nice? They put on plays and they sing and dance. But I think... I open it up to you. You already mentioned the United Nations on multiple occasions, but go for it. What about the reach?
Okay, well, we don't just put on shows. It's so true. I've been fortunate to keynote speak all over the world. China, Hong Kong, Argentina, Israel. Many of these trips I've shared with Barry. All over the United States, many of which I've been able to share with Dave, where I keynote, and then also I offer trainings where I train people in these methodologies so that they too can bring this type of community to their this loving, accepting, appreciative community. We're at Brown University, which is incredibly exciting. The Miracle Project is evidence-based in easing anxiety, creating dialogue, compassion, and communication between those with and without autism.
Can you speak to that a little bit? The evidence-based model for bringing this to a set or to a production?
Yeah, well, actually, that is a study that Barry was involved with, and we used some of the assessment tools from the search model, where where the Miracle Project, we had a neurodiverse cast of teens, those with and without autism, writing an original musical, and at the same time being studied by the sociology department, psychology department, and special ed, using criteria that Barry helped to develop. And
so you were able to take that and then basically adopt it and apply it here, and then use this to improve outcomes when you would have a neurodiverse cast, we'll say,
yes.
Blended actors.
Yes, absolutely. And well, it's always blended. Everything we do at the Miracle Project is blended. It's not an acting class for people with disabilities, which
it's not a silo.
It's not. Everything's included, and everyone gets roles, and everyone writes and creates, and we write original music and all that. But it's evidence-based to create that communication. It's evidence-based to enhance joy, communication, understanding, compassion. And the state of California supports us now in that we have social skills and life skills programs that are supported by the state of California because of the evidence base. So but yeah, we do offer trainings, and we do offer consults, phone consults, and
can I join? I'm 43. It sounds perfect.
Will you come? That would be amazing.
Hell
that
yes.
would be phenomenal.
Of course I will. I mean, this sounds, I'll let you keep talking, but this sounds amazing. I mean, it's so perfect.
Definitely. And it's all done through fun, and joy.
I think, in discussing the study that proved, here's the evidence of significant changes, and that was done at Cal State Northridge. And I think one of the things that's so striking about that study, and if you could comment on this, Elaine, is that they just did not measure changes in the actors. They looked well beyond the actors, which is a little bit of a microcosm of what the Miracle Project does in terms of, you use such an important word, in terms of community, but the ripple effects beyond just what's going on in the performance or on the stage. Would you like to talk to that a little bit?
Thank you, Barry. Yes, the ripple effects for those that are not on the spectrum, that are involved, but the staff. We have people who come to us that have had traditional background in being with people on the spectrum, and their whole, they say they see changes in the kids that they'd been working with for 5 and 6 years in less than 2 weeks. They get to see who that child really is. We also had surveys and studied the audience members and how their perspective completely changed by experiencing those on the spectrum. And I think that is really my mission, is to change the way the world perceives ability. And that's my main mission in life. And we do this through these means, but the audience members are transformed. I mean, Autism the Musical, I still get emails from people who say that after seeing that film, they'll never look at someone with autism the same way. And that it really, there's inclusive theaters now all over the country, which that didn't exist.
Amazing.
We have so many exciting things happening. The first of which, the Miracle Project will be the first original musical created during quarantine, written with and starring a neurodiverse cast on Broadway-On-Demand.
Oh my gosh. That's huge.
That's great.
Wow. How long has this been in the works?
Well, we created this. We were supposed to be live last June.
Sure. Of course.
And again, debunking myths, we pivoted within 2 weeks to a whole virtual program and changed this live original musical to a virtual form. And it came out better than it could possibly have come out anyway. We can't even think of how it would be live now because it's called The Influencer. So to have it,
makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's so accessible too. You don't have to fly yourself to, as exciting as Broadway is. You don't have to get yourself to a theater, buy the tickets and blah, blah, blah. You've just opened yourself up. Presumably this will be on a streaming platform where everybody can access it.
It's on a streaming. It's like the Netflix of Broadway.
Amazing. I love it.
Broadway-On-Demand. They saw the show and invited us. So
way to go.
It's pretty amazing. It's really amazing. Everyone now, people
That's
always say,
incredible.
I wish I could see your show. Now people all over the world can see our show, which is just amazing.
And how can they get to see it? What do they need to do?
So they would go on Broadway-On-Demand and search for The Influencer, or to make it easier, they can just come to our website and we'll have a link. So the website, themiracleproject.org, and we'll have a direct link. So that's exciting. And the music, many of the songs are written by our actors. Dom wrote a song. We have a couple of our actors who are musicians composed a song. And so that was really cool, where we had the musicians playing the instruments all in separate rooms. Mm-hmm. I mean, in their own house.
Right.
In their own house. And then we had to mix it to sound like one song and then edit it so it looked like they were all in the same garage playing music. Brilliant. I see that Dom is here.
Dom is
Yay,
here.
Dom.
Join us.
Thanks for joining us. And you've got some exciting news, Dom.
Yes. Well, the last session of the Miracle Project, we did the first ever musical virtually, and that show was called The Influencer, and we got picked up by Broadway-On-Demand, which is very huge, amazing.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Dom. How you doing?
Hi, Barry. I'm good. Good to see you.
Fabulous. So how long have you been involved, or how long have you been participating in the Miracle Project?
I've been with the Miracle Project for 7 years now. Miracle Project has been mentioned by a lot of my friends that I used to go to school with, which was the help group. And yeah, I've heard the Miracle Project from a lot of people. I was very, very interested in figuring out what this was all about. And it took a while, but we finally connected with Elaine during the summer of 2014. And next thing you know, I'm part of the summer program for Miracle Project and did the musical Joining the Spectrum.
You've done a lot of different things. You do music, you do acting. What really speaks to you? What do you like the best about what you've done in the Miracle Project?
It's basically sharing your voice with everyone, and also getting to know new people, seeing old people, great faces, old friends, new friends. It's like, it's exactly like you're at home, but this is something very new to you.
That's such an incredible way of putting what I love about the Miracle Project. When you say you feel like you're at home, it's like, this is my tribe, this is my family. And so I imagine you've made some wonderful friendships.
Yes, a lot of wonderful friendships, new friendships, old friendships that have never been forgotten.
Dom, that's a doing about as well in life, I think, as it gets. And I got to, we've both spent time on the Atypical set. And that seems like it seems like a very comfortable, very family oriented set. Was that your experience as well?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that was a very good experience. And everyone was like really nice there. All the crew, the cast, everybody was just incredible. And Kier, he was like one of the coolest people that you could ever hang out with.
I would agree. Kier and Nick are two of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life.
And how special that is for you to get and be on the set and be participating as an actor on the set of a professional, award-winning television show. I mean, were you nervous? Were you extra excited? How did that make you feel when you first came to the set of Atypical?
Oh, it was very, very exciting. I was not nervous. Actually, as I started, growing up in life, I realized that, you can do this. You're a pro. You can do it once you put your mind to it.
I think we could all learn from that. Yes.
That's right. That's right. You're a pro and you're very well prepared. And I think when you're a professional, you know why you're doing something and you come really well prepared. There's really nothing to be nervous about. And that's when your performance really, really shines. And you've had some killer lines. I don't know, the character's lovely and you do a great job with them. I had a question about acting. in general. You recently, Dom, did a voice acting job. Is that right?
Yes.
So I'm curious, as an actor, is it more difficult or is it easier to be kind of doing a voice acting role when it's just you and a microphone versus being in a scene and on a stage? Are there different challenges?
Wow. In voice acting, I think it's like very more easier because, you know, it's almost like recording a song. You're just getting a couple of takes, you know, and they ask you to redo it, you know, you do it. It's not going to be like a problem. The acting and the camera and stage set, I wouldn't say that would be hard either, because, you know, it's almost like you're getting ready for this huge concert, and, you know, you just gotta try to keep up the good energy, try to work together with the team, you know, and if there are any minor setbacks, you know, we gotta get with it. We gotta go with it.
That's right. Go ahead, Elaine.
With Dom, we do two different things. One, I know the first day on Atypical, because a number of the Miracle Project kids were part of the peer group, and there was a concern, like, would they be able to, you know, hold up all day on a set, and would they be anxious? And as Dom, as you so beautifully said, it's like, this is our happy place. It's being in the real world that causes anxiety. Being
Yes.
You know, being on a set 12 hours, woohoo!
You got
and
snacks.
I really think, Dom, that you and your fellow, cast members really revealed and opened doors for more and more roles for people on the spectrum, because they are so professional. They knew every single line before. We practiced, they had it. They were, never complained. No, for us, craft service was like super cool, not, oh, where's my milkshake? I think you guys were so professional, and there wasn't any fear, because this is our asset. What do you think, Dom, about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's definitely what we people with autism want to show, is that, we're able to do this. We want to show that there's a world of possibilities, that people on the spectrum are able to get a decent job. I mean, I love the show Born This Way, but they're not showing enough autism people in the world.
And I think that's why it's important that we have shows like Atypical and musicals and plays that are doing it right, because we can change the narrative through media. It's called propaganda, but sometimes propaganda is a good thing. And I also think it's important that we hire the right actors for the right roles, because you could be guilty in some cases of tokenism and saying, oh, let's pat ourselves on the back because, well, we went and hired 5 autistic writers or 2 autistic actors. But it does the community no good when there's that perception. So I think what I've enjoyed about Atypical, what I love about the Miracle Project, is it's never look what good we're doing. It's truly servicing a more productive narrative and breaking barriers that have existed that we didn't build, and knocking those things down. So I think, Dom, you're doing you and your acting peers in this program and the writing peers are really doing the hard work of paving roads for the next generations of actors. And by the way, the closer art gets to real life, the better the art becomes. So you're right. We definitely need more autistic representation in media.
Beautiful. The other thing with Dom is we noticed early on that Dom was always side coaching and helping out the other actors in the Miracle Project. So this year he's actually a formal, we call it the Miracle Masters. He's part of the Miracle Masters program and is helping to be one of our student or peer assistant directors. And so that is something that he is a talent and a skill, Dom, that you have. You know, you're always watching out for the other members of the cast and making sure people are online and being respectful. And it's a real gift that you have. And we've been able to see your voice come through stronger and stronger. I'm wondering how that leadership role is for you.
Yeah, I think it's going well for me. I think, you know, when you start something new, you're sure you're able to pick it up. And, you know, with the assisting masters thing, I feel like I'm starting to pick up more of it.
So I just heard before we got on the phone call that there might be a Uniquely Human the play. And I don't know where this information has been, Barry. We've only been on the phone 6 times a week since March, and I haven't heard. This is the first I'm hearing about it. So what is this?
Dom, you are welcome to talk about it.
Okay. Basically, Uniquely Human is basically a book that Barry had wrote. And, you know, now we're trying to basically put this musical on about how everybody in the world can be uniquely human.
I love that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And is this a Miracle Project production?
It's a Miracle Project production inspired by Uniquely Human and created by all of our company class. We're in the creative process right now, which is, we really never know what the story is going to be because everyone contributes their thoughts and feelings, and then we collaborate and turn it into a story.
That's brilliant. That's so great. Well, congratulations. And I can't wait to see what unfolds and what this becomes, because everybody is uniquely human, but not everybody has an opportunity to really stand up and shine. So I love this. I can't wait to see the play when it's ready. Elaine, was there anything else that you wanted to offer before we hang up?
Maybe if because the benefits of quarantine, all of our classes are virtual. So for all of your listeners anywhere in the world, we have classes throughout the week. And if people want to visit us, we have acting classes, singing classes, professional training, acting classes, and then social skills classes.
And how do we find those?
That would be on our website, themiracleproject.org.
Themiracleproject.org. Cool. So we'll put a link to this on the website.
Thank you guys so much. So much fun to be with you.
You too, Elaine.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Our entire next segment, Barry, is the enthusiasm of the week. And I have to admit, it's a little rigged. So, Barry, you and I are musicians, and I think it's fair to say that each of us is nearly pathologically enthusiastic about it. So, we've identified ourselves as this week's winners of the Enthusiasm of the Week award, but we are not going to interview ourselves. Instead, we've invited Mike Craigler to join us. Mike is a pianist, a composer, an arranger, you name it. Mike and I studied music together at the University of Miami. He composed a beautiful piece for my wedding, actually. And a few years ago, he turned to music to express to his son, who's nonverbal, so much about his love for him as a father and about who he will become as a person. Mike's work is incredibly sincere, timeless. Mike, it's an honor to have you here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. That's quite an introduction. Not there's plenty of exaggeration there, but I'm honored. I'm just thrilled to talk to you, Dave, and to Barry also, but that's quite an honor to hear.
All right, I'll come clean. Mike is a piano mover.
More functional.
That's right. Not a single creative idea in his head. No, but thanks for joining us. And actually, you and Barry know each other too. So you learned that your son Joe is autistic, and this led you to a remarkable journey of discovery.
Yeah. So Joe's behavior for about a year or so seemed to, the general list things that are generally assumed to be characteristics of autistic individuals. It seemed like he was matching up with a lot of those, and it's funny, we really had no experience with it, even though, autism is talked about way more than Dave when we were in Miami. But at the same time, it was very, very strange. It was because we had gone through with James, he was a quote-unquote neurotypical kid, and it was just weird for a while, and I don't know if this is it, but there was something inside saying, I think it is what people talk about autism. So then at the CNDC, I think I have the place right, we went, and sure enough, I mean, there was little doubt in their mind after they ran the gamut of tests that they do, that Joe was on the spectrum. The very next thing on my mind, I was going to call Dave, because I had read Dave's book, and of course gleefully every word, because I know Dave so well. So right away I was going to call Dave and ask him what he thought I should do. And the other person I called was my friend Amanda Friedman, who was a high school friend, sort of a free spirit, poet, music person like me. And I had learned that she had started a Center for Autism in New York called the Atlas Foundation. And it's also associated with a website and Facebook group, Emergency, like Emerge and See. So, and they run a great thing over there too. So she was the other person I called. And they both had, it was funny because they both had, of course, very close friends, very warm people. They both had amazing things to say. And I literally kept notes from the conversations, and specific phrases that they said to me ended up becoming the lyrics of the composition that I wrote about Joe, and about the experience of learning from him and going on this journey with him. Dave, I recall you saying to me many, many things, and I think I might even have the piece of paper somewhere, but one thing you said was, this is going to sound a little crass maybe, Mike, but I am stoked for you for the journey that you're about to go on. And, I was looking for someone to tell me it's going to be okay, again, as if it were some sort of it was bad news, to put it very bluntly. But Dave didn't give me that feeling at all. It was like, this is going to be a very exciting time for you, and this is good. And so I took that from Dave, and then the main thing that Amanda said, which is kind of like the first lyric in the piece, she said, people are going to tell you a lot of things, and they're going to tell you he's broken. He's not broken. And that one really stuck with me, and thus the piece begins, you're not broken, like me saying it to Joe.
And what a blessing that you have people like that in your life.
Absolutely.
Because what we hear, of course, is the parents, what I call the war stories. The parents who talk about, doom and gloom on the internet, doom and gloom, read this article, doom and gloom, speak to this other parent, even from another parent, doom and gloom. And you not only had that other voice, but you had other voices with people you really trust. So important.
Yes. And I was lucky. That was a blessing. There's no question. And since we mentioned that, the other thing that Dave said, I mean, of course I wasn't going to forget this. He said, the other thing you need to do is you need to talk to my friend Barry. He wrote a book that's very important on autism and all this. And by virtue of knowing Dave, I was able to hook up with Barry, you very generously, because you were certainly, I think you had just gotten back from Australia or going there, something like that at the time. And so Barry said, I can meet with you for 15 minutes to talk to you about Joe. And I was like, okay, great, thank you. And we easily talked for an hour and 15. And I wasn't pushing it. You were just that friendly and kind. Because Barry happened to live, I should mention, close by to me, and Dave thought of that. And that was, I think that was only about a week later, maybe. And it was just and I had sucked down Barry's book anyway, but I had read Barry's book before meeting with you. And that was tremendously helpful. And it just put, they say start things get off on the right foot, or whatever the expression is. It felt like the perfect way to it just made the whole thing a lot smoother, and there was support there from 3 very special people right away.
How did you receive the news? You mentioned you weren't surprised. Were you certain that you should feel upset, or were you not sure about how you should feel? Where were you on that?
Closer to the second. But this word autism, like, okay, what does that mean? Will he not want to walk? Will he be able to talk? Will he want to play music? Will he not want to do music? And to me, what I've sort of become adjusted to now, and I guess I've always liked this way of thinking, to me, it's like a really great mystery. Mm. So with Joe is nonverbal. And, but that said, I see him more and more now actually reacting, because I talk to him all the time in English and in Spanish, actually. And he does see, I know he knows the word no, but he does react to more and more. But you're looking for the typical cues we're used to, of, eye contact, or, hey, look, Daddy, a Spider-Man doll or something. And with Joe, it's amazing how much, well, first of all, he started to give me more clues too. But I believed that from day one, like, you have no idea, like, what he might already know his alphabet and both languages, and who knows, like, how to play the piano already somehow. But it's this really cool mystery with Joe that's slowly, and to whatever point that gets is also a beautiful thing. But it's a really interesting experience that I have with him. And when Dave said you're going to go on this journey with him, that was how I decided to take it. And I'm no hero doing that. I just wanted to do this for him, so that he felt a close connection with me. And just one more, I could go on and on about this, but another thing Amanda said, and this is of course related to Barry's book, but Joe's an arm flapper, when he's happy, and talking about getting rid of behaviors like that. Amanda said, don't ever think about doing that. Do it with him. Do it, and the more I did it with him, eventually it would get a smile out of Joe, because someone's doing the kind of thing I do, and it's a good feeling too. Like she had a million examples like that of things that I'm air quoting here that would look weird to anybody else, like on the bus or on the street. But with Joe, it's I'm like a different person. Like, absolutely anything to try to make this connection with him.
The wonderful person Elaine Hall, who we just spoke to, that's how she originally connected with her son.
That's beautiful.
That when he would flap, she would do that with him, but then they would pretend that they were birds. And this reminds me of a phrase that is controversial in the eyes of some people, but when it comes to understanding people who may not, and children who may not give us the signals that they are attending or they are understanding, the phrase that has become important to a lot of people, it's called assume competence rather than look for what's missing. And it doesn't mean that the child is understanding everything we're saying, but it has to do as much with your attitude as your actions.
I used to be told in my elementary school classes that David's not paying attention, or David, he's not participating or engaged in the lessons and this and that and the other. And like, no, I'm paying attention. I'm just paying attention to how your ass shakes back and forth when you write with chalk at the chalkboard. And I'm paying attention to the sound, the timbre of your voice. I didn't know the word timbre when I was 7 years old, but I could still do a killer impression of my third grade teacher. And I was paying attention, just not to maybe the stuff that they were grading me on, And Mike, it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you just described with Joe, I love that you're noticing these cues, because if I'm taking Joe's perspective, I wonder if he's maybe coaching you on how to be his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a question about that.
These types of situations reveal kids who are socially savvy enough to manipulate their parents into, like, here's how you need to be my folks. Manipulate in a good way, not in a pejorative sense.
Yep. Oh, I think that's spot on. Like, there's also, words only go so far, because Joe is also, he smiles and laughs plenty, but he didn't used to as much, and but even still, he seemed like a super calm and happy. He just seemed contented always, like on his face. And so just almost like he did understand something way better than any of us. So it really does feel like, in the piece it talks about what's called into your world. So it talks about getting into his world as opposed to, no, you come into my world. Like, no, he's got this figured out already. You got to figure it out from him. So it was all the perfect. And Barry's book talks about people who are it people and Uniquely Human being a detective. And absolutely, like, it's that way of thinking about Joe and it's fun. It really is that, like, okay, I got to figure out what he's trying to tell me when, and this is before he takes my hand now, but before he ever did that, like, to find out what it is he's actually trying to say to me and to, to try to feel like he's feeling. He definitely, he was in control of that, Dave. I think that was an astute way to say it.
Mm-hmm. So following your beautiful segue, let's talk about the piece that you wrote a bit. I think let's give our listeners a little bit of background about that, and that you are a composer of orchestral and choral pieces.
So I work in music, and I studied jazz originally, but I got to be an accompanist after that at the University of Miami. And I was doing so much of it there. It's kind of like the same gig I do now in Rhode Island.
Yeah, you accompanied me.
That is true. Yes, Dave. I believe the Bernard Haydn, at least the first movement, Sonata for Saxophone was one of the pieces.
Yes, sir. You are exactly right.
And I think we are the first. And by the way, this is not the more famous Haydn that people, the Joseph Haydn. This is a different. No, because it's Heiden. So I was gonna. This is probably the first podcast that has mentioned Bernard Haydn. Just things like your listeners are like, what the heck are they talking about?
Yeah, I love how, of course, I can't play the mainstream Haydn. I have to go play some Haydn who's nobody's ever heard of. He's got a permanent asterisk by his name. That poor bastard. You know? No, I'm Steve Mozart. I'm not that Mozart, but I still write music, for God's sake.
That is fantastic.
So you were making the music at Miami, and then what happened next, Mike?
Oh, very good. Yes, like a coffee talk thing. So I also worked at one of my accompanying gigs in Miami was working with the choirs, and so I ended up accompanying them a lot. And I started to realize that choral music, I kind of do whatever's around me, to be honest, music-wise. I study jazz, I still love jazz. But working with the choirs was a neat experience because I just think in the world of choral music, there's this, I don't know if it's the fact that the instruments are within us, because that's very human, it's our voice, There's a certain emotional level, like I've noticed, like, we're the only ensembles around that give each other back rubs and like do like trustful exercises and have icebreakers. You don't hear about that with orchestras as much. Like, what are you doing? Get your hands off of me. So, but with choirs, it seems to be more. So there's something intimate, and there's also a great deal of progressive thinking, it seems, within the choral world. Like, where there's something like the Black Lives Matters movement, or issues like suicide or bullying. It feels like the choral world is some of the first, among the first people to pick up on it. Plus, we sing texts, and obviously that can be a very powerful thing. So, I don't always just write a piece about every single thing, going on in my life. I really don't. Most of my music is quite, I would say as a composer of music with words, you're usually looking for a poem and perhaps some other poetic text that you set, like Emily Dickinson or E. Cummings or something like that. Something people like to set religious texts, so you've got Latin things and things from the Bible. But in Joe's case, even though I'm sure there's a lot of great poetry about autism and writings about autism, there are, I said this needs to be more personal, and I had the great phrases before that I mentioned. Dave talked about the idea that you have to get into his world, and again, my friend Amanda saying that he's not broken. Right away, that was a jumping off point, so I scribbled down. I didn't just scribble them down. I wrote out the words, and then I edited them to make sure that a couple of rhymes in there, perhaps, but it came rather quickly, because sometimes it's a little bit more of a struggle. And then I set about writing it, and so it's an a cappella choral piece, so just the voices. I ended up incorporating a couple of other things, such as the humming noise that Joe would make. I had that start the piece, so as a special effect kind of a thing. And then in the live performance, so two of Joe's habits here, or the stims. So two of Joe's particular stims were that he liked getting really close to objects that spin. For example, the lid of a pot and the way the light kind of gleams off of it.
Oh, yeah.
And he also likes leaning his head. It's almost like he's trying to get another perspective. So those became like the main verses in the piece. Like I mentioned that and when things spin, it's like he wants to get closer and closer to it, almost that he could get inside it, which of course you can't because then the object would stop. But he wants to get right up to it as close as he can so that the effect is intensified. And I just think it's fascinating. He'll even do it, I've noticed in the shower, try to stare at the way the water is falling because there's a little bit, of light that's hitting the water. And these are the things I like watch Joe all the time, like these things that he's trying to see. And again, it could be anything and he'll try to spin it, like you hand him something. So there's that. And then, the leaning his head to the side. So during the piece of music, I had the singers lean their heads to the side during a certain part. And of course, this is a visual aspect. And then also to do a bit of hand waving over their mouths, which can also affect the audio sound. So there were some attempts at some special effects in there, which is sometimes done in choral pieces. But
what this reminds me of, it's very interesting, about you're infusing aspects of what people call the autistic experience into the piece, but you're also having the performers trying to experience that themselves, which has an impact. And that's what you did with the choral piece.
I tried. And it was easy to, coming up with the concept. There was more than enough source material from Joe's types of behavior and the way to incorporate that in the piece. So with Joe spinning, when I mentioned that to Amanda, she said there was somebody in the the autistic center that she runs there. They had an individual who became verbal later, and he was also a spinner. He loved getting close to those objects in the same manner. And she asked this person, she said, when you were spinning all of those things, why were you doing that? And he said to her, when I was spinning those things, for me, everything else stood still. And that blew my mind, and I ended up incorporating that into the lyrics too. So Barry, because you mentioned Uniquely Human, how important it was to understand that when autistic people are uncomfortable, it's like pain to us. So like it's not necessarily that something is burning you, but it's something that uncomfortable. And so with Joe, when he's spinning something, I'm not stopping that. I want to let him do that for the experience that it's giving him because he's regulating here. This is something that's crucial to him. And
more and more, now that we have the benefit of so many autistic adults talking about their experiences, the whole concept of stimming has been turned on its head as being kind of a sign of pathology. And now it is, and you use the word, it is seen as self-regulatory. In many cases. In other cases, it's seen as enjoyment. It's something I like to do because of the sensory experience. So that for you to have that insight, is important. And for you to incorporate that into your art is amazing.
Yeah. And Mike, you mentioned that you can see a profound contentment on Joe when he's just doing his thing. And I describe that state as autism zen or autistic zen. Neurotypicals devote lifetimes to meditation, yoga, thought work, all to achieve this sort of full body sense of peace and stillness. And for those of us on the spectrum, many times, we're sort of living in that space until the neurotypical world pulls us out of it or something happens. And when we break someone out of their Zen-like state, of course you're going to see exacerbated behaviors or less positive outcomes. But when parents like you, Mike, honor those moments and the behaviors that keep them in Zen, that trust, Joe is getting that trust in his family reinforced over and over. And I don't know if this is instinctual or learned, but man, you're a great model for parents and how we can celebrate our children.
Of course, I'm very honored to hear that kind of talk about the piece and about the parenting. And, I don't want to break up his flow and his vibe and his Zen. And I don't want to do that to anybody else either, So
music is so important in your household. Do you see Joe responding favorably to music either as, input stimulus or as an expressive exercise?
Absolutely. Rhythm mostly. Because he likes bouncing too, but like I'll pick him up and dance with him actually a lot of the time. But even if I don't pick him up, he he starts running around the room more once we put the music on loud a lot of the time, like salsa. And so he'll also, I think a lot of it might have to do with vibration. He will go to the piano and bang on the high keys. I mean, he's not, I'm not going to lie here and say that he transcribed this, this Bach theme. Like, no.
Well, Mike, let's listen to your piece. Do you want to set that up for us?
Sure. So the piece is titled Into Your World. It's for a cappella choir. We performed it at Providence College, I think about 5 years ago now. And there are other recordings available because it was also done by the Brockton High School Choir in Brockton, Massachusetts. I have a very good friend who conducts that group there, Matt Cunningham. So there are videos and audio available on my YouTube page as well as on my website. You can find it through my Facebook artist page too, Michael C. Craigler. But it's the piece that was inspired by Joe. And it's my words speaking to Joe, telling him that I want to get into his world, to let me in. That's a phrase that repeats it a lot. So I think it speaks for itself.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Barry.
Yes.
This is Into Your World by Mike Kregler. as I reflect on the piece we just heard, the conversation we just had with Mike, and the conversation that we had before that with Elaine and Dom, some really great themes emerged and really complemented each other. And like we couldn't have written this better than the way the conversations just turned out. And the big theme for me was connecting with your child, getting into your child's world instead of insisting that the child comply with the world that you knew and are familiar with. So what are some of the takeaways we should leave our listeners with today?
I think one overriding takeaway certainly is how much the performing and expressive arts and music provides opportunities for autistic people of all ages to show their talents and their strengths. And I think takeaway number one is we really need to explore those opportunities, make them available.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen in so many ways, and so have you with the Miracle Project and me now with the Spectrum Theater Ensemble. So that's very important for us to seize those opportunities and build on
Sure.
them. And I think takeaway number two is that these opportunities not only help the individual child or older person, but it provides connections to other people who might be on the spectrum or other people who are neurotypical. And Elaine's discussion of the Miracle Project and making it so clear that it's not a program only for people with disabilities, that we bring in neurotypical co-actors and neurotypical peers. I think that's very, very important.
Right. That's that silo versus, blended outcomes.
Absolutely. And then finally, I think what we see with Elaine and Mike is that their family members have really inspired them and inspired their own creativity, and how Neil inspired Elaine to develop the Miracle Project, and how Joe is inspiring Mike to try to share what Joe's experience might be through the beautiful choral piece that we just heard. So let's look for the inspirations that our family members on the spectrum provide for us. And when those doors open, let's step through.
Absolutely. And step through hand in hand with them to be their coach, their advocate, and to help set the stage for them, quote unquote.
Most certainly, yes.
Excellent. And with that, I should actually mention that we are doing a holiday-themed episode next. So what could be a very peaceful, restorative time, and of course I'm talking about the week before Thanksgiving until January 2nd, whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, you cannot escape this little period here in the Western Hemisphere. So for a lot of families, it is a period of unrelenting obligations, mayhem, social commitments, and if you're not careful to prioritize your own needs during the holidays, I think the sense of peace that we all talk about can be rather elusive. So on the next episode, we will share some perspectives from different autistic families, including my own, as to how we approach the holidays to keep our wits intact.
Two uniquely human families, how in their own unique ways they deal with the holiday season.
Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, please join our ever-growing community by visiting uniquelyhuman.com and using the form to subscribe to Uniquely Human. And then there you can download every episode and access additional information and discussion guides. The discussion guides handwritten by Barry himself, I might add. Also, by the way, as of today, I am pleased to share, Barry, that we are now streaming this podcast on YouTube, in addition to us being syndicated on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and the others. So check us out on YouTube and hit the subscribe button to get every episode as soon as it's published. Have I left anything out? Apparently bananas at one time had gone extinct and then made a spectacular comeback. I think I read that somewhere. Also, if you enjoy the music on our show, it's all provided by Matt Savage. So check him out on savagerecords.com and go buy his stuff. He's amazing. All right, thanks for listening.